y'all, what's up? I am Dr. Allison from drallisonanswers.com, and I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and I've pretty much made it my life mission to help people live healthier and more meaningful lives. And I'm so pumped to be here today, and I'm so grateful that Alex invited me to her space and to her home to talk with you about anxiety. Anxiety is probably the main reasons that people come to my website and also come see me for therapy in my private practice. I think anxiety is especially challenging for women as we are constantly feeling the pressure to do it all. But thankfully, psychology has so much to say about how we can manage anxiety. It does not have to rule your life. It does not have to take over for you. You can do some things to manage it better. So today I'm going to share 7 of my favorite ways to do that, and let's go. Number 1, approach your anxiety like a scientist. Think about a scientist, right? They are logical, thoughtful, rational. And that's what we want to do when our brains are irrational and wanting to drive our bus off a cliff with sort of anxiety and worry and fear. So one of the ways to do that is when your anxiety kicks up and it starts imagining and inventing and kind of distorting what's really going on. I want you to do your best to step back and to try to look at the data. What information do you have in front of you? And what is the accurate conclusion that you can draw from that information? So let me give you an example. Let's say that you think a friend is mad at you, right? They were really slow to respond to a text message that you sent, and when they did, it was kind of an odd, real flat response. And you're like, oh my God, did I do something? Did I make them mad? Right? And your anxiety starts creating this whole narrative. I want you to stop. And I want you to look at the data. Think of all the interactions you've had with this friend over the last couple of weeks. Maybe this one was a little bit strange or forced, but I bet you can think of 4 other data points that have been positive and suggest that your friendship is rock solid. You don't have to ignore the one data point, but I really want you to look at all of those. And I think you're going to find the majority of the data is supporting a conclusion that isn't consistent with what your anxious brain is telling you. Tip number 2, breathe. Now, before you go anywhere and before you roll your eyes, I bet you've been told this a lot. And to be honest, I think the way most people breathe and the way that most people learn about deep breathing is not helpful. So hear this. If when you are anxious, you just take a big breath in and a big breath out, first of all, that's not a deep breath. That's an exasperated sigh, and it's not going to do anything to help you with your anxiety. Instead, what you want to do is take a deep breath in through your nose. Then you want to pause and hold your breath before slowly exhaling. This slow and controlled way of breathing is how we activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the calming down. It's really cool because there aren't very many things in psychology that are totally foolproof, but this one is. If you breathe like this, deep, slow inhale, pause, and then that slow exhale, you're targeting your anxiety at a physiological level. Number 3, I want you to brainstorm all the possible ways that a situation could play out. Your anxiety is an amazing sort of creator, and it has an awesome imagination. So your anxiety is often going to create and sort of narrow in on some of the most far-fetched random outcomes, but it's going to focus on things that are scary and sort of convince you that that's how it's going to play out. And you know what? Maybe it is going to play out that way, but there's so many other possibilities for how it could play out. Your anxiety doesn't want you to think about those, and your brain might not generate those options or possibilities naturally, so you're going to have to remind it to do that. One of my favorite examples is to think about when my little brother, who is like my little boo-boo and I love him so much and I'm a very protective I'm a very overprotective big sister. When he travels and I don't know what's happening to him and he doesn't respond to my text, my anxiety first says, he's dead on the side of the road, something awful happened. And what I challenge myself to do is brainstorm all the other explanations for why he hasn't responded to my text. Okay, sure, it's a possibility that he's dead on the side of the road. However, maybe he's driving, maybe he's listening to a podcast, maybe he has his phone in the back, maybe he left his phone at home, maybe it's not charged. There are a million different possibilities, and my anxiety just wants to focus on a few really scary ones, but you can challenge your brain to think of all the possibilities because there are way more than your anxiety wants you to believe. Number 4, focus on transitions. Your brain is really amazing, and when you're doing an activity, it is sort of already anticipating how things could go, and it's got a lot of energy poured into that. So when you change activities, let's say when you go from work to home, your brain is still in work mode. And if you don't pause around transitions, it's like you have this little drain on your sort of energy tank, right? You don't realize it, but if we don't manage transitions well, basically we're just going and going and going without ever stopping. Maybe you've read like a paragraph or a run-on sentence and you're like, wait, what's going on? This is confusing. Punctuation is what helps us make sense of things. So I want you to think of these pauses at transitions. Those are our way of kind of like gaining some clarity, pausing. Those are great times to use that breath that I mentioned earlier. So every time you're changing activities, let's say email to cooking, work to home, driving to going into a doctor's appointment, each one of those are transitions. And I want you to stop at every transition, take a breath, pause for 10 to 15 seconds, get your bearings, and then go forward. Otherwise, you're depleting your energy sources and your brain is just going, which is going to increase the likelihood that your anxiety revs right up. Number 5, remember that your thoughts are not always the truth. Anxiety feels so real and it's going to convince you that that thought is the truth. But I want you to remember, my thoughts are not always the truth. I use that sentence every single day. When your brain starts to go to worst case scenario, when your brain starts to predict awful outcomes, stop and remind it, my thoughts are not always the truth. This will help you challenge your brain before that bus drives you off the anxious cliff. Number 6, meditate. I know, a lot of people don't like this suggestion because, I don't know, they think it's funny or it feels strange, but meditation has a ridiculous amount of science behind it. And honestly, that is how I got on board, because I saw the research on what happens to the brain, both structurally and the way it functions when you meditate regularly. Meditation is just a way of focusing your attention. And I want you to think about it as a muscle, meaning the more you work it out, the stronger it gets. When you're anxious and you need to bring yourself back to the moment to say, hey, okay, hold on, calm down, think through the options. That muscle that sort of gets you to come back to the moment, that's the muscle you work out with meditation. And if you're only working it out when you're super anxious, your muscles aren't toned enough. They're not strong enough to help you do that. So you want to meditate regularly, not just when you're super anxious. And if you're new to meditation, my favorite 2 apps for starting would be Headspace and Calm. You don't have to meditate for 30 minutes a day. You'd be amazed at what 5 minutes can do. If this is a new habit, it's going to take some time to get used to, but the science is so good. I sort of don't understand how people who struggle with anxiety aren't meditating. It's a really helpful tool that's free with no side effects. So definitely give meditation a try if you struggle with anxiety. All right, the last tip, number 7, of course, if you've been dealing with anxiety for a long time or it just feels like it's getting to be too much, y'all, reach out for some help. try therapy. I've dedicated like almost my whole life to this and a lot of student loans because it's amazing. Therapy is this blend of both a science and an art, and it's so helpful for helping us manage all this stuff that is constantly packed in our heads. So many of us will spend money on a personal trainer or a yoga studio. Our kids go to soccer camps and private violin lessons. Then why is it any different going to an expert to help us work through our anxiety? That doesn't mean you're signing up to lay on the couch forever. It just means you know how you want to feel, you're having some trouble getting there, and you want to have someone help you get there a little bit quicker and a little bit more efficiently. So give therapy a try. If you aren't sure how to find a therapist, I have a really helpful post on my site about 5 ways you can do that to kind of narrow down that process and make it less overwhelming for you. I hope these tips were helpful, and I want you to know this. If you struggle with anxiety, first of all, you are not alone. It is one of just the biggest things I think that people are struggling with in their daily life. And the amazing news is that it doesn't have to completely run the show. We don't get a lot of control over what life throws our way, unfortunately. But here is what I want you to hear, and I say it so much on drallisonanswers.com. You can control how you respond. You may not get a say in what happens, but you absolutely have a say in how you respond. And choosing to respond with some of these strategies can help reduce your anxiety so that you can live a more enjoyable, free, and pleasant life. Again, if you want more stuff like this, you can check out my website, drallisonanswers.com, and of course you can find me on most social media channels. And I want to give a special thank you to Alex again for this amazing community that she has created, and also for sharing her story and inviting so many of y'all to share your story. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.